Hey everyone. I know it's Christmas Eve and you're probably up to your ears in holiday cheer, but maybe some of you out there are like me and still thinking about real estate, even on a day like today. So if that's you and you're specifically curious about the Santa Clarita Valley, especially Stevenson Ranch, well, you're in for a treat because we're diving deep today into a brand new market update straight from a local realtor. So get ready for some interesting numbers. We're talking real-time insights, folks, and a heads up on a new law that might surprise you, especially if you're thinking about buying in California in the near future. Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually. We're looking at a snapshot of the market right now, this very moment, which is really valuable, because things change so quickly in real estate. Absolutely. So let's zoom out for a second and set the stage with the Santa Clarita Valley market overall. What's the big picture? What kind of activity are we seeing?
Well, the Santa Clarita Valley is buzzing right now. It's a really active market, particularly in the price range that might be relevant to you in Stevenson Ranch. We're seeing a lot of movement, a lot of deals happening, and a good number of closed sales just in the past week alone. This is pretty typical for this time of year, though. People scrambling to finalize things before the year ends for tax purposes, maybe, or just to have everything settled before we hit 2025.
That makes sense. So let's narrow our focus now and zero in on Stevenson Ranch. This market update paints it as a really sought-after area, especially for families.
Oh, absolutely. The source really highlights Stevenson Ranch's appeal. Great schools, safe streets, tons of outdoor activities for families to enjoy. It seems like a perfect blend of that suburban peace and quiet, but with easy access to all the good stuff.
And what about the homes themselves? What kind of price range are we talking about in Stevenson Ranch?
Well, the listings there actually cover a pretty wide spectrum. You've got everything from around $538,000 all the way up to $1.875 million, which is great for buyers because it means there's something for pretty much every budget, a good variety to choose from.
Now, here's a detail that caught my eye, and I think it's particularly interesting for anyone thinking about buying in Stevenson Ranch. The source mentions that homes there are selling very, very close to their asking price. In fact, the sold-to-list ratio is a whopping 97.5%. So what does that tell us?
That's a huge detail, and it could mean some good news for buyers. Basically, imagine you're selling something like a car for, say, $10,000. That 97.5% ratio means sellers are getting $9,750 on average, which leaves some wiggle room for you as the buyer to negotiate a lower price, you see. With that high sold-to-list ratio, there's a good chance you can haggle a bit, especially now with the holidays just around the corner. Sellers might be even more eager to close deals quickly, so you could potentially snag a really good deal if you play your cards right.
That's great insight. Now, this source even mentions a resource called Stevenson Ranch Homes as a place to see what's currently up for grabs. So if you're feeling that year-end energy and ready to jump into the market, that might be a good starting point for your search. Now let's flip the script for a moment and look at things from the seller's perspective. This market update breaks down three main pricing strategies: competitive, market-based, and aggressive. Let's unpack those a bit.
Sure thing. Let's do it.
So starting with competitive pricing, what's the gist of that strategy?
Well, competitive pricing basically means setting your asking price a little bit lower than similar homes that are currently on the market. The idea is to attract more buyers and maybe even trigger a bidding war, which can help you sell your home faster.
So it's about creating that sense of urgency and excitement, right?
Exactly. Now, market-based pricing, on the other hand, is more about aligning your asking price with what similar homes in your area have recently sold for. It's considered a more balanced approach, aiming for a fair price within a reasonable time frame.
Okay. And what about aggressive pricing? Does that mean setting a sky-high price and hoping for the best?
Not necessarily. Aggressive pricing is about setting your price a tad higher than the current market value, but you're banking on the unique features of your property. Maybe it's got some upgrades or it's in a prime location. You're hoping those extras justify the higher price tag. It can definitely work if you've got a truly exceptional property, but there's also the risk that your home might sit on the market for longer.
So it's a bit of a calculated risk then. It could pay off big time, but it could also backfire. This is all super helpful for sellers, but it really underscores the importance of working with a knowledgeable realtor, someone who can guide you on the best pricing strategy for your specific goals, right?
Oh, absolutely. A good realtor is invaluable in this market. And here's another tip for sellers that this source points out. Offering concessions can really make your property stand out. Things like contributing towards closing costs or being flexible with the move-in date. Those little extras can sometimes be the deciding factor for a buyer.
Okay, so we've covered some valuable ground here for both buyers and sellers. But now I want to talk about something that's super important for anyone thinking about buying in California. There's a new law coming into effect on January 1st, 2025. and it's a game changer. So listen closely.
You're talking about the buyer-broker agreement law, right?
Yes. So break it down for us. What's the deal with this new law? What does it mean for home buyers?
Well, basically, starting next year, it will be mandatory in California for buyers to sign a buyer-broker agreement with their real estate agent before any services are provided. It's kind of like imagine you're at a car dealership, and before you can even test drive a car, they make you sign a contract saying you'll buy from them if you decide to go ahead. It's a similar idea in real estate now. This agreement outlines all the key details, the commission rates, how long the agreement lasts, whether the agent will represent you exclusively, all that stuff.
Wow. So you're essentially legally bound to your agent before you even start house hunting. That's a pretty big shift. What are some of the potential implications of this new law?
That's a great question, and it's something we're going to dig into a bit later in our deep dive. But for now, the most important thing is to understand everything in that agreement before you sign anything. Be crystal clear on what you're committing to, especially when it comes to things like commission fees and the length of the agreement. You don't want any surprises later on.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. Market trends, pricing strategies, and this big new law. Now let's get back to what makes Stevenson Ranch so special. This source highlights a bunch of reasons why people love living there, and I think they'll resonate with you. First up, location, location, location. It's conveniently located near Los Angeles.
Ah, yes, that sweet spot. Close enough to the city for work or fun, but far enough away to enjoy that quieter, more suburban lifestyle. It's the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Imagine wrapping up your workday in the heart of LA and then driving home to the peaceful, family-friendly streets of Stevenson Ranch. Sounds pretty idyllic, right?
It does. And speaking of families, the source also emphasizes the top-notch schools in Stevenson Ranch, which is a huge draw for parents, of course. Plus, there's no shortage of parks, hiking trails, and rec facilities, so there's always something to do outdoors. Seems like they've really got it all.
And let's not forget safety. The source mentions that Stevenson Ranch has a very low crime rate and a really strong sense of community. That's a big deal for a lot of people, especially families.
Absolutely. A safe and welcoming community is priceless, and it sounds like Stevenson Ranch delivers on that front.
Okay, so we've talked about the diverse range of homes in Stevenson Ranch, the excellent schools, the safe community, and that awesome blend of suburban living with easy access to Los Angeles. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
There's one more thing about this buyer-broker agreement law that we should touch on. It's about how this law could potentially change the balance of power between agents and clients.
ooh, I love when you say that because it usually means we're about to go down a fascinating rabbit hole. I'm all ears. What are your thoughts?
Well, think about it. Before this, law agents were basically competing for clients. They had to prove their worth up front to earn your business right. But now with this agreement in place before any services are even provided, it kind of shifts things.
I see what you mean. It's like the agent has a guaranteed client before they've even lifted a finger. So are you saying they might not have to work as hard to win clients over?
That's one possible interpretation. And while that might sound like a good thing for agents, it also raises some questions for buyers. Could this lead to less competition among agents and maybe less personalized service for clients? Or fewer options to choose from? It's something to consider.
That's a really interesting point. It's like this new law is adding a whole new layer of strategy to the real estate game, both for buyers and agents.
Exactly. And it shows how even seemingly small legal changes can have a big impact on an entire industry. It'll be fascinating to see how this plays out in the coming year, how agents adjust their strategies, and whether buyers become more selective in choosing their representation.
This is definitely something to keep in mind as you navigate the real estate market in the coming year. Knowledge is power, especially with all these changes on the horizon. But let's take a pause here and we'll come back and delve deeper into these topics and more in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back. Glad we're taking the time to really break this all down because it can get a little complicated. All these details can really make a difference when you're navigating the real estate world.
For sure. So let's jump right back into this new buyer-broker agreement law. We were just talking about how it could potentially shift the power dynamic between agents and clients. What else should buyers be thinking about with this new law?
Well, one thing to remember is that even though this agreement is mandatory, it's still negotiable. Don't be afraid to talk it over with your agent and make sure everything lines up with what you want and what you're comfortable with.
So it's not just a take it or leave it situation.
Not at all. You can definitely negotiate things like the commission rate, how long the agreement is in effect, even add specific clauses that protect your interests. It's really about being open with your agent and making sure you're both on the same page before you sign on that dotted line.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it's super important to have a clear understanding of your own needs and priorities before you even start talking to agents.
Absolutely. Knowing what you want in terms of the type of property location, your budget, even the kind of relationship you want with your agent, that all helps you make smarter choices and find an agent who's really the right fit.
And speaking of finding the right agent, this new law could actually make that decision even more crucial. Since you're basically committing to an agent before you even start looking at properties, you really need to do your homework and find someone you trust and feel good working with.
Totally agree. And if you're looking for more info on this new law and what it all means, the source we're looking at actually mentions Santa Clarita Open Houses as a good resource. They might have some articles or guides that explain things in a way that's easy to digest.
Good to know. Okay, so it feels like we've really unpacked this buyer-broker agreement law.
Hmm.
But let's circle back to Stevenson Ranch for a bit. You know, something that strikes me about this community is that it seems to have a real emphasis on outdoor living.
You're so right. The source really highlights all the parks, hiking trails, and rec facilities in Stevenson Ranch. It sounds like a dream for anyone who loves spending time outside. There's even a specific trail system mentioned that winds through the whole community with amazing views and a chance to connect with nature.
That sounds incredible. I can picture myself going for a morning run or an evening stroll along those trails.
Yeah,
It definitely adds to the allure of living in a place like Stevenson Ranch.
totally. And then there are all the community events and activities that happen in these outdoor spaces, too. The source mentions farmers markets, concerts in the park, even outdoor movie nights. Seems like there's always something fun going on, which really creates that vibrant community vibe.
Yeah, it's like they create this lifestyle that combines the convenience and amenities of suburban living with the beauty and peacefulness of nature.
Exactly. And for families with kids, having access to these safe and well-maintained outdoor spaces is huge. It lets kids explore and play and be in nature, which is so important for them.
You know, another thing that stands out about Stevenson Ranch is the variety of architectural styles. The source mentions a mix of traditional and contemporary homes, so there's something for everyone's taste.
That's a great observation. And it speaks to the planning and thought that went into creating this community. They clearly wanted to make it visually appealing and diverse, not just a bunch of identical houses.
And that architectural diversity probably adds to the overall appeal and value of the homes in Stevenson Ranch. It's not just a place to live, it's an expression of your personal style.
Absolutely. And speaking of value, let's talk about the financial side of living in Stevenson Ranch. The source points out that property values have been steadily climbing in recent years, which makes it a potentially good investment for homeowners.
That's encouraging for anyone thinking about buying in Stevenson Ranch. And even if you're not solely focused on investment, knowing that your property is likely to gain value over time provides some peace of mind.
For sure. And of course, there are other financial factors to think about too. Things like property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA fees if those apply. Those costs can vary depending on the specific house and neighborhood within Stevenson Ranch.
So it's always smart to do your research and include all those expenses in your budget.
Absolutely. And speaking of being well informed, remember that market conditions are always changing, so it's wise to stay updated on the latest trends and maybe even chat with a financial advisor before making any big real estate decisions.
Excellent advice. So it seems like we've covered a ton of information in this deep dive, from the Santa Clarita Valley market overview to all the ins and outs of Stevenson Ranch, including those important details about the buyer-broker agreement law.
We have, and I think we've given you a solid understanding to help you on your real estate journey, whether you're buying or selling. But before we move on, there's one more thing mentioned in the source that we could probably highlight.
Oh, right. The person who wrote this market update is a local realtor, and they mention their own book as a helpful resource for anyone who wants a more comprehensive guide to the local market. You can find it at SantaClaritaOpenHouses.com/book if you're interested.
Exactly. And while it's always good to check out different sources and viewpoints, it's clear this realtor knows the Santa Clarita Valley market inside and out, especially Stevenson Ranch.
So if you're looking for more specific insights and expert advice tailored to this area, their book could be really valuable. But hey, no pressure.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure you have all the info you need to make the best choices for your real estate goals.
Well said. Okay, so as we head into the last part of our deep dive, I want to shift gears a bit and think about the bigger picture. We've discussed all the current market trends, the unique aspects of Stevenson Ranch and this new buyer-broker agreement law. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the future of the Santa Clarita Valley real estate market as a whole?
That's a great question. And it's one we'll explore together in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at some predictions and potential trends that could shape the market in the coming year and beyond. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into the Santa Clarita Valley real estate market, with our spotlight on Stevenson Ranch. We've covered a ton of ground already, current trends, the new buyer-broker agreement, all the nitty-gritty details. But now I want to take a step back and think big picture. What's next for this market? What does the future hold?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Predicting the future of real estate is always a little bit like trying to read tea leaves, but there are definitely some key factors we can look at that are probably going to shape the market in the coming year and beyond.
Okay, I'm ready to put on my real estate fortune teller hat. What should we be keeping an eye on?
Interest rates, for sure. They have a huge impact on affordability. If rates keep going up, it could cool things down a bit, make it harder for buyers to qualify for mortgages.
Right, higher interest rates mean higher monthly payments, and that could push some buyers out of the market altogether, especially first-time buyers who might already be stretching their budget to the max.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if interest rates level off or even go down, it could spark even more demand and lead to more competition among buyers.
So it's kind of a wait-and-see game with interest rates. What about inventory levels? We talked about how the Santa Clarita Valley, especially Stevenson Ranch, is really active right now. Will that continue?
Inventory is a big one. If the number of homes for sale stays low, we're probably looking at a continued seller's market with buyers fighting over limited options. And that could drive prices up even higher, especially in desirable areas like Stevenson Ranch.
Classic supply and demand. Low supply, high demand equals higher prices. But what happens if more homes come on the market?
That's when things could get interesting. If we see a sudden increase in inventory, it could shift the balance of power more towards buyers. They'd have more choices, maybe some room to negotiate.
So for someone like our listener who's interested in buying in Stevenson Ranch, watching those inventory levels closely is key. Are there any other factors we should be factoring in?
Oh, definitely. The overall economy always plays a role in real estate, job growth, inflation, consumer confidence. Those things can all impact the market. A strong economy usually means a healthy real estate market. But if there's economic uncertainty, people tend to be more cautious and things can slow down.
It's all connected, huh? The local market is part of this bigger economic web that we don't always have control over.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to stay informed and keep up with what's happening. Real estate is a long-term game, and understanding how the market works can help you make good decisions that line up with your goals.
And speaking of good decisions, let's circle back to that new buyer-broker agreement law.
Yeah.
How do you see that impacting the future of real estate transactions in California?
That's a good one. It's probably too soon to say for sure what the long-term effects will be, but I think it's going to create some ripples throughout the industry. Like we talked about, it could change the dynamic between agents and clients, and it might change how agents do business and build those relationships with buyers and sellers.
It's almost like we're entering this new phase of real estate with new rules and new ways of doing things. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Definitely. And like always, the keys to stay informed, adapt to the changes, and get expert advice when you need it. Real estate can be a bit of a maze, but with the right knowledge and guidance, you can navigate it successfully and reach your goals.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, listener, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Santa Clarita Valley real estate market, focusing on Stevenson Ranch. We hope you found all this information helpful and maybe even a little bit exciting.
Even though it's Christmas Eve and you're probably thinking about a million other things right now, we hope this deep dive has given you something to think about, maybe even inspired you to take that next step in your real estate journey.
And whether you're buying, selling, or just daydreaming about your future home, remember that knowledge is power in real estate. Stay informed, keep up with the market trends, and you'll be well on your way.
And on that note, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and successful New Year.
Happy holidays, everyone.